Thank you, David, for this beautiful drawing of the context. And I just want to invite everyone to feel in their body right now how they've reacted, how the body has reacted to David's description of where we are right now in time. What was your bodily response to that? I know that for me, there was a sort of a contraction and fear just by evoking that place that we are in right now. And that contraction is actually coming from a very specific self, which is that separate self, which is one self, one narrative that we live inside of, right? The narrative that, and the state and stage of consciousness that we've all had on this call, we've all had to experience as we came to form, as we came into this world. The baby arrives in this world and they're still immersed in this oceanic consciousness. And it takes us a few months to actually begin to realize that there is a me and a not me. And this is the whole story of the development of the child. The first glimmer of I am happens between 6 months and 9 months. And then we evolve at 3-year-old. We become really and identified to the body. And then there is this whole process of individuation that happens. So the separate self is a real station that we've all had to develop. And that is extremely important. We cannot live in this life without a strong identification to separate self. And when we speak about separate self, it's important to understand that, and here we are actually using the metaphor of a puzzle piece to describe it. It's really the sensation of being the single puzzle piece, or being the skin and encapsulated body, this consciousness that lives in this body, and there's a me and a not me. And I have a story, this is my life, and it's pretty much the narrative that's built on self-reliance, on competence, on professionalism. We seek our own comfort or achievement, and we want to be right. We want to have a life, contribute, strive to achieve success. It's a very important part of who we are. And that's actually the story, the self that has created the story that has brought us to this crisis, this existential crisis that we live in. Because our whole civilization is built on that story of separation. But it's not the only self. And in the unique self theory, we distinguish the separate self from the true self. The true self, which is, if we keep the same narrative, the same metaphor of the puzzle piece, here in the true self, there are no more puzzle pieces. It's actually the whole puzzle has become one, because all the contours of all the puzzle pieces that make it have merged into one field. So what is that true self? That true self has been described by many different traditions, East and West, as the field of belonging, the ground of being. It's been called God, Adonai, Allah, Shiva, Atman. All the traditions have described this state of consciousness and the stage of consciousness in which we no longer feel the contours of our individuality, and we're merged into one field of consciousness. This is what some have called the experience of enlightenment, the experience of merging into the field, the source, the seamless code of the universe. It's a state of consciousness that has been sought by all the spiritual traditions, and all the spiritual traditions have developed certain techniques and practices in order to have a taste of that field. And again, here in that field, every contour of my individuality disappears, and there's no more. There's no me that can have that experience, because it's emerging. And so as beautiful as that experience is, there is a re-emergence from that field when we come back to the personal. So if we have that experience of being merged into the one, there is a moment when we're going to come back into our reality, our sense of being back into our body, back into our consciousness. And from that place, there is a realization. There's a realization that there has been a realization that I am not that only that separate self. There is a ground of being that is activating me always, that's always already here. And that's the ground from which the consciousness of unique self becomes possible. Unique self has always been here as a possibility. It's always been here as an essence. However, from that place of realization of the true self, what we call the one, their possibility of unique self becomes real. And there are ways that we can activate that consciousness. So what does it mean to be a unique self? What does it mean to live as my unique self? What it means is to be a self that has come to, that has awakened as a separate self, that is aware of one's contractions, that I'm aware of my contractions. I'm aware of the ways that I've built my personality and the ways that I'm trapped into certain identifications that contract me. And I've also had a taste of the true self. I also have had a realization that I'm not just that personality. I am not just that identification to all these stories that I live in. There is something bigger. There is a field that from which I arise, that is so much more than my little separate self can grasp and understand. And that field I'm able to tap into it. From that place of that connection to the field, the unique self can arise, because now it's no longer the personal that has no connection to the field. It's the personal, after the transpersonal. It's the personal 2.0 in a way. From that place, I realize that my essence that is unique, that I am a unique expression of that field. And that if I was a tree, we're using the metaphor of a puzzle piece here, but if we use the metaphor of a tree, as unique self, as separate self, I would be this tree, but I have no idea that I'm in the forest and there's a whole interconnectivity that is happening to make me that tree, and that I'm rooted in the soil, and there is a whole mycelial interconnectivity that happens through the soil and through the air, and I live in this whole organism, which would be true self. When I arise as unique self, I have the lived experience of being grounded in that soil, of breathing through that air, and I become alive and activated. And this is the possibility for each of us as human beings, to become this unique expression of the living field that animates us every moment, that's always already here, available to us. And the Unique Self Emergence is a technology that brings this home to our lived experience. So, yeah, I'm going to give you a little more information and then we'll go into our experience. So, as David said, Dr. Mark Gaffney developed this beautiful teachings about the unique self, and they draw from many traditions. And as I just presented, There's also quite a lot of Western psychological understanding of this human development through the separate self, the process of individuation. Then there's also that where we are bringing, we're bringing this whole understanding of how the separate self can tap into the living field, the ground of being that is the true self, which draws from all this understanding from the spiritual traditions. So what we've developed with the unique self-emergence process is a map. And the map is not the territory, but it helps to actually navigate this thing called life. And so maybe some of you here are familiar with this yellow arrow, which we call the U process. It's a transformation, a technology that was developed by MIT lab scholar Otto Scharmer. And basically what it says is that in order to change, we need to go down. There's a descent into source, what Otto Scharmer calls source. Change does not happen by doing the same old thing. So separate self remains a separate self if it stays in its own box, right? Change and transformation only happens if there is a descent into something that's bigger than me. If there is a move from my head and my conditioning into my heart, my way of knowing from the heart, and then from the heart into my body. So there are different ways of knowing things, not just the head, but also from the heart and from the body. And this descent, and what Otto Scharmer describes the descent into the you, the bottom of the you, we call it the descent into true self, the ground of being that always animates us, that's always already here. And so from that descent from separate self to true self, then there can be an arising as unique self. This arising as unique self comes only when we've drunk from the animating field of the you, of the true self, of the field. And so as unique self, I realize that not only I have unique contours, but my unique contours are actually the currency of my capacity to be in the field with others. It's because I'm unique that I contribute to the whole. And there's a realization that I'm not just unique, I'm actually participating in the ever evolving field by giving my unique gifts into the world. So it's again, with that, if I take the metaphor of the forest, as a tree, as unique self, not only am I starting to feel and to be activated by the mycelial connections under my roots, but also and in my branches, but now I'm realizing that every movement that I do is participating in the regeneration of the whole and the ever evolving creativity. So we become part of a living system, and we are both completely informed and nourished by the whole, but we're also completely ourselves and unique. This is the idea. And so the unique self-emergence process is not just this description of this journey, but it's also a technology that has developed practices for each of the steps that allows us to move from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So as separate self, I need to awaken and to realize what keeps me, in order to come out of jail, we need to know we're in one. So we need to know what our jail is made of. As true self, there are practices and technologies that allow us to cultivate that capacity to be in as one, to be nourished by the one. And then as unique self and evolutionary unique self, there are practices that help us emerge as our unique self. So that was a lot of talking. Thank you for hanging in there with me. And now let's go into practice.